Amid the United States war against Iran comes a very, very interesting twist in the tale. The Americans are now talking about a quote unquote waiver on India when it comes to the purchase of Russian oil. And no prizes for guessing why. After the US Iran war has created vulnerability in the global oil trading systems, obviously there is concern about oil supply worldwide. But is this just the Americans replacing one kind of unilateralism, the weaponization of tariffs, with another kind of unilateralism? How the American war has expanded into so many theaters, including right in India's backyard in the Indian Ocean. In a moment from now, we'll be talking to veteran diplomat and India's former Foreign Secretary, Kanwal Sibal. I'm Barkha. You're with the Mojo story. On the program today, these images have been released by Sri Lanka, capturing a dramatic rescue operation of the IRIS Dena, the Iranian warship that was sunk by a US submarine in the Indian Ocean near the coast of Sri Lanka. We now know officially that the Indian Navy also responded to distress signals that were received in Colombo, assisting and supplementing efforts made by the Sri Lankan Navy. Sri Lanka has also offered refuge to the crew of a second Iranian ship that has all basically now come offshore and have taken refuge, so to speak, in Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, questions abound. Questions are still being asked about how India should feel about that ship and that operation having taken place so close to the Indian Ocean, region, as it were, so close to home. The war, in the meantime, rages on. There have been targets in Bahrain and Dubai, including a state-run oil refinery in Bahrain that was hit by an Iranian missile. The night skies in the Gulf countries, in many parts or in many cities, continue to look like the images on your screen. In the midst of all of this, comes a kind of flip, a kind of pause on Trump's great tariff plan, already, by the way, held illegal by the US Supreme Court. Now the Americans are talking about a so-called waiver that will ostensibly allow India to purchase Russian oil. For the record, India never stopped purchasing Russian oil. In fact, in February, Russia remained the largest supplier of crude oil to India. There's a lot to talk about. How should we be responding to this entire situation? We saw a statement from the Prime Minister talking about military conflicts not leading to any solutions. We saw Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri signing the condolence book at the Iranian embassy in Delhi, the first such visible demonstration of condolence after Ali Khamenei was taken out by the Americans. I want to introduce on the program now our newsmaker, Kanwal Sibal, veteran diplomat, is with us. Mr. Sibal had some very incisive commentary ever since the Iranian warship was taken down by a US nuclear submarine. Thank you very much, Mr. Sibal. A lot has happened in the last 24 hours, and I'll start with the latest. This so-called waiver that is being offered by the Americans in the midst of, obviously, a possible oil crisis, a global oil crisis that could be created as a result of this war. How do you respond to that? Do you see it as ironic? Do you see it as doublespeak? Do you see it as one sort of unilateralism, the weaponization of tariffs, to another sort of unilateralism, which is basically this war and how it's pulling in different parts of the world?
It's a bit puzzling because if you recall the statements that have been coming from Trump himself and from his advisors, Trump said that Prime Minister Modi has agreed not to buy Russian oil. There is no suggestion in this that it will stop overnight. It just says that he's made a commitment. In fact, he's used the word commitment, but there has been no commitment on our side. The other is that he in his Truth Social said that we will be monitoring India's purchases of Russian oil. And he asked the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Treasury, the Secretary of Commerce, and the concerned person in the White House to track India's purchases. So it was clear that India was not going to suddenly cut off all purchases of Russian oil, but over time, it would do so. And the United States would monitor it. Therefore, I don't understand why they want to give a waiver. I mean, India can continue to buy limited oil supplies from Russia, as we have been doing.
And actually, the purchase never stopped. Well, at least not as of now. As of now, the purchase never stopped.
Purchases never stop. Now, what I understand from this, I may be wrong, but this is my interpretation, that Ambani Reliance had announced that they will not place any fresh orders for Russian oil.
Right.
And their refineries are geared to process Russian oil. They have been buying it for a long time. And they have very vital interest in not trying to break US sanctions. Now, if they have decided to resume purchases of Russian oil in the context of global shortages that are likely to occur after what is happening in the Persian Gulf, maybe Reliance would take advantage of that, and it will fill its needs of continuing to purchase Russian oil. Otherwise, uh, there was no bar to India buying uh, on the spot market oil available from Russian oil companies that are not sanctioned. So there's a bit of a mystery behind this. That's one aspect of it. The other, of course, is, is this kind of condescension and this kind of uh, how should I say, humiliating us that we can buy Russian oil or oil from any other country, depending on the goodwill of the Americans and the permission of the Americans. What's the point in? I mean, they could communicate this to us privately rather than making a public statement to this effect.
So
It just
you're saying this public statement by the US officials and the US government was not needed.
it was not needed. It was not needed. Uh, Now, again, the irony is this, Barkha, that if you remember during the Biden administration, they asked us to continue buying Russian oil so that there was no shortage of oil on the global market and the prices would not spike. And they said it publicly that they wanted Russian oil to become available and India to buy it. Uh, so now that the prices are going up and they've gone up to $85, uh, so you come back to the same logic.
Yeah,
And Trump and his henchmen were poo-pooing that logic.
correct.
And now they have following the same logic. I mean, I don't know if they think through what they say and do. I presume they don't.
Talking about not thinking through, let's come to the war. And something that has taken place and generated a lot of debate at home. You've commented in detail on your social media platforms on this, is what happened with the Iranian warship that was a guest in India, part of the fleet review that was in fact reviewed by the president. Sailors of the ship were, in parades in Visakhapatnam, and now most of them are at the bottom of the ocean. Uh, yes, technically, this ship was not in Indian waters, but it was within the EEZ of Sri Lanka, the exclusive economic zone. Sri Lanka sprung into action. We now know that our Navy responded to the distress call as well. But the presence of a US nuclear submarine in war mode in the IOR, in the Indian Ocean region, how should that make us feel?
See, a couple of things. One is that the US knew about the participation of the Iranian ship in this fleet review and these exercises. And Milan exercises are actually, the word itself means coming together in confluence, a meeting, or whatever else. And the whole idea is to create better understandings, better cooperation, more collaboration. For what? For peace, stability, for freedom of movement, of inclusiveness. The entire philosophy of this exercise is peace and stability oriented, not conflict oriented.
Yeah.
And the United States was invited and was part of it, and the last minute they withdrew. But they participated in it with their P-8 Poseidon surveillance aircraft, which is very powerful and which can track the submarines and other surface ships in the Indian Ocean area. So they participated by way of a P-8 Poseidon aircraft, which means that when the Iranian ship was returning home, they could track it and they could communicate with their submarine and position it in a way that as soon as it was close to Sri Lanka, uh, they sunk it. Now, if it was, as you said, in the EEZ of Sri Lanka, that's another violation of the of UNCLOS, because if you are in the EEZ of a country, you can have a peaceful passage of military ships after notification to the host government. The
Yeah.
Americans say this is an infringement on our freedom of navigation, so they don't inform the concerned governments. But irrespective of that, you're not supposed to take military action in the EEZ. They have done that also. And they have not kept at all the sensitivities of either India or Sri Lanka in mind. Now, if they actually were hell bent on sinking this ship, they could have let the ship sail back as far away, close to the coast of the Persian Gulf or whatever else, and sunk it there. Then there wouldn't be that delicacy, which I mentioned in my tweet. After all, we were the hosts, and the ship was
Yeah.
there because we invited it. And
Yeah.
it did it in front of our president. It saluted our president and everything else. So we don't have any political or military responsibility. We're very clear on that. Absolutely, we have no guilt on that account. But there is something like camaraderie and and a moral, how should I say, position on this. That is the least we could have done, and I've said it in my in my tweet, which incidentally has got 10 million views.
My
Uh,
God, 10 million. So you know how many, you know how strongly people are engaged in this issue, by the way. It tells you that, and of course, your own commentary on it. But go
I, I
ahead.
I was surprised at the number. It still baffles me, but nevertheless, that I think, and I said that the Indian Navy could have just issued a statement expressing condolences for the loss of life without blaming United States or any of the technical things and stuff like that. At least in terms of your camaraderie with the
Yeah.
sailors who were with you in that exercise. And
Yeah.
naturally, for this, they would have needed government clearance, which they could have obtained. And this was something normal to me, to my mind. Why they
Yeah.
didn't do it, I'm a bit puzzled.
So the Navy, you say you said in your tweet and you're repeating it, could have issued condolences because after all, they were, i- talking in a friendly way, probably sharing a drink with them or a cup of coffee with these very sailors a couple of weeks ago. The other puzzling thing is that the Navy, in fact, was part of rescue and search. It did respond to the distress signal, but it didn't issue that statement also till very late in the day when all of us discovered that that had happened. My question to you is when you say America did not keep sensitivities in mind of either India or Sri Lanka, how would you describe this behavior? Is it hegemonic? Is it arrogant? Is this, I mean, what is the word you'd use for it?
I think your words are very appropriate. It's both
Is it,
hegemonic and everything else. I mean, you can even use stronger vocabulary. After all, look at the way the US Defense Secretary has been gloating over this. Look, America has the most powerful military in the world. They don't have to demonstrate their military might by sinking an Iranian ship. Uh, they can sink whatever because on the maritime space they're very very strong. So what's the point in gloating over this and as if a huge success has been achieved? Except said that first time since the Second World War that a naval ship has been torpedoed. Well, what's the point in saying that? I mean,
yeah.
first time since the Second World War, you're committing a huge mistake. I mean, what are you trying to convey? I mean, this kind of trying to demonstrate how strong you are. We know you are very strong, and as it is, they're claiming they have sunk the most of the uh, naval assets of Iran, so it's not
Yeah.
new. So why not keep a little bit the sensitivities of countries like India in mind, since that this is happening close to our shores and they were part of our Milan exercise? Why not keep those sensitivities in mind? And especially as Barkha, uh, we are cooperating with the United States in these Malabar exercises. and in the Indian Ocean region. And the real threat is from where? The real threat, as is being felt, is from China and its submarines which ply in the Indian Ocean to keep track of these submarines. That's why we bought I-8 aircraft and 8 more we have want to buy and stuff like that. So the real threat is that. And that was the whole purpose of keeping the Indian Ocean secure and creating a deterrence there for any country that seeks to dominate this region. So why take out an Iranian ship in the circumstances?
Absolutely. It befuddles me, absolutely, and I think many Indians. Do you believe that the government should have conveyed displeasure either publicly or I mean, if they've done it privately, or at least I won't know. But do you believe there should have been some public expression of displeasure, or is it awkward because legally and politically, as you said, the ship was in international waters, so it's a awkward situation. It's more a sentimental situation, and it's the discomfort of such hegemonic unilateral behavior.
Yes, it is. It is this, the sentimental part in inverted commas is there. But if you use the word sentimental, then a lot of people will say you are not living in the real world. The real world doesn't believe in sentiment, believes in power politics and this and that.
Yeah.
So you are being namby-pamby and stuff like that. I mean, they will in fact, how should I say, uh, they will try to embarrass you by saying that
Yeah.
you don't live in the real world. So let's not use the word sentimental. I would put it differently. That the whole philosophy has India's philosophy has been in the past to keep the uh, big powers out of the Indian Ocean. That never really happened. The whole
Yeah.
concept of Indian Ocean as a zone of peace and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now that concept has got transmuted over time because we become friendly with the United States. We don't feel any threat from United States, which we did after they set USS Enterprise into the Indian Ocean, the Bay of Bengal. There was need to be concerned about what the US Navy was doing in our region.
Hmm.
But that phase is now over. We have no threat from the Russian Navy. We are collaborating very closely with the French Navy in the southwestern Indian Ocean. Mm. So the only threat that is being perceived is because of the phenomenal expansion of the Chinese Navy. Yeah. It's building, aircraft carriers day after day, kind of a thing, and the number of ships that they have built and etc. And they will inevitably come into the Indian Ocean. That's where the threat is. Uh,
Hmm.
so, uh, so we are collaborating with the United States in what we see as a shared uh, potential threat, right? But this is not a shared potential threat. Iran. I mean, what can Iran do in this part of the Indian Ocean at all?
Yeah.
So why do it?
Absolutely.
So why do it close to our shores? Uh,
Yeah.
it's insensitivity to India, and then our own philosophy of
Hmm.
Indian Ocean. We have this Sagar, security and growth for all, and then Mahasagar, which is an expanded concept of the same, but which also has an element of being a net security provider and this and that.
Yeah.
So if we are a net security provider, then I think we fail miserably because of our partner in providing security to the Iranian ship. We were not able to do that in terms of our own understanding with the United States because the United States did not believe in that kind of understanding. So I think there are a lot of mistakes the United States has committed in terms of taking the action that they have taken.
Talking about well, arrogant statements or condescending statements, or rather blunt edge statements coming from the United States, eyebrows were also raised, and I think you tweeted about this as well when a US official spoke at the IRIS Dena dialogue about how the United States was not going to make the same mistake as it had with China. I'm just going to play out that statement, and I'd love your response to it. Let's take a look.
Excited about the trade deal that is almost at the finish line now, and think that can be the basis for really unlocking almost limitless potential. And so we are very much excited on focusing with India on these economic and commercial opportunities. And so, but again, India should understand that.
Well, that got cut off at the operative bit, but he goes on to say that India should understand that we will not make the same mistake that we made with China, and India will not be allowed to be a competitor. So you heard that statement.
Yeah.
What is your response?
Well, I reacted to it on Twitter or X or whatever it is. First of all, I mean, if he came here, it was to give assurance to India that we are going to move forward with you. The tariff bit created huge misunderstandings and bitterness in India towards the United States, and therefore it was wise on his part to say that we are committed to expanding our economic ties with you, etc., etc. And even if he said that there was a tariff issue, yes, there is a tariff issue which we are trying to resolve through this framework agreement and the agreement that will eventually be signed. But what's the point in saying that, warning us that we will not commit the same mistake as we did with China? Why did you commit a mistake? Because we asked you to commit a mistake. I mean, you went ahead and did what you did with China because you saw merit in it, you saw profit in it, you saw huge gains in it. Your corporations made billions out of this because of the whole issue of labor arbitrage. They wanted to shift production to places where they could get cheap labor and then from there export locally and to the rest of the world. And whose bottom lines were served? The American corporate sector, which is part of the American system. Now they discovered that China did not rest there. They developed their own technologies and in fact began to dominate very vital areas of manufacturing, which made the rest of the world dependent. And then the whole dialogue about resilient supply chains and everything else, after the COVID thing, became the language of diplomacy. So it's not as if they committed a mistake. With hindsight, they can say that the China did not expect China to rise so quickly and challenge the United States of America. And now they are saying that we're not going to commit the same mistake with you, which means, if you take it literally, which means that we're going to monitor what we're going to invest in your country. We're going to monitor where we will invest. We will do it in a manner that you don't develop technologies on which we become dependent, and therefore you have the upper hand. So we'll keep you tied to us, but in a way that we continue to dominate you. And you will become part of an ecosystem which we dominate without you getting the capacity to independently work to your advantage in the trade and manufacturing area. It's absolutely the wrong message to send already, as you know, those who are not terribly fond of the United States and serious people have been saying that, look, don't become over dependent on America. Look at America's past record, and they will make you dependent on you, and then you can't rely on them. And they cite Trump's the manner in which he treated us on tariffs and everything else as an example of that. Now, those kind of suspicions and reservations that many right-thinking people who otherwise want very good relations with the United States, those concerns and reservations will be strengthened by this kind of talk and on our soil.
I mean, the statement was made in Delhi. I mean, what does one make of this sort of...
They have lost all sense of diplomacy, frankly.
That's a big statement. They have lost all sense of diplomacy. The question is, how should we react?
You know, it's very difficult. I tell you why. I mean, you know, but I can spell it out. First of all, Trump is extremely difficult to handle. Now, we shouldn't also get into some kind of a paranoia that we are his victims. Everybody is his victim. To begin with, his closest allies. I mean, he wants to make Canada the 51st state. He wants to take over Greenland. Look at the sort of things he's done to Europe. He's bullying Europe. He humiliates publicly the leaders of Europe, whether it's Macron or whether it is now Pedro Sanchez of Spain. He doesn't want the EU to exist. He's against its existence. So it's not as if he is only targeting us. Therefore, what conclusions do you reach?
Yeah.
It is that you have to manage him somehow, hunker down, uh, see that the damage he can do to you is the least possible. Don't challenge him openly, because he'll make everything an ego problem. He must win.
Yeah.
Therefore, psychology becomes a very important part of diplomacy. Uh, I mean, you can't be frank with a person like that, because
Yeah.
you don't know how
Yeah.
he'll react. So therefore, I think India is wise in trying in the way it is playing it out, uh, letting the relationship in whichever areas America wants to move forward, and where our interests are also met. That cooperation go ahead, and not stand in the way. Because ultimately it'll hurt our interests, because we need
Yeah.
technology, we need investment, we need more trade. It's the biggest market, biggest consumption market in the world. We had a surplus with them, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. So
Yeah.
that is what we are trying to do, and in the process, obviously, our Amur prop is being hurt, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everybody's Amur prop has been hurt, so we can take consolation from that.
That's fair. And let me just ask you a final question before we let you go on the war against Iran itself. This is this if it carries on, and Politico in the US is now reporting that the Pentagon is preparing for a war that could go on till September. If this carries on for that length of time, or even any longer than another couple of weeks, it has consequences for every part of the world, including for us in India, because the Gulf countries have been pulled in, because there are nearly 10 million Indians there, because there is oil supply linked up, because you don't know how this is going to play out even in Pakistan, what's going to happen there. There are all manners of concerns. So how worried are you about a prolonged conflict?
I think very worried. I think our government is worried. That's why they had the CCS meeting,
Yeah.
because they want to understand the consequences of this. As you rightly said, we have almost 10 million people there. We have about 45% of our oil coming from that region, about 38% of our remittances come from there. But it is something much beyond that. It is that the model of development of these countries, based on creating Singapore like efficient hubs uh, for uh, for trade, for investment, for data centers, for certain areas of technology and everything else, to make the environment so conducive, uh, so efficient, so that countries, corporations continue to invest in this area. Now that model is proving to be unworkable. If
If this
if
carries on, yeah, if
it's
this
carrying
carries
on.
on, yeah,
Actually, even now that model has been hurt.
yeah,
At the end of the day, in some countries, the population is not local. They're all there because they see opportunities
yeah,
for advancement of careers, research, this and that, doing business, whatever. Hmm? Now, those people, if there's uncertainty, will walk out, or will
yeah,
start rethinking what they should do, or look at alternatives. So this model is under threat, and we were building our relationship with these countries based on this model, where they have the money,
yeah,
we have the population scale, and certain assets
yeah,
which they need, and therefore it was a good marriage. That's why we signed the FTA with the UAE. We're negotiating one with the
yeah,
GCC, etc., etc. Now, if this carries, if this carries on as it is, our interests are likely to be hurt. But if this carries on, then they can be more severely hurt. The other is that some of the projects like IMEC, uh, connectivity projects and all, they will need to be shelved. The ITU2, in any case, I think has been damaged almost
yeah,
irretrievably because of what has happened.
yeah,
And I'll end with that, if there is no regime change in Iran, and there is no uh, new regime which is very friendly to the West and will do the bidding of the West, means that this uncertainty will continue. Because if you have a ceasefire, or if you have some kind of calming down of the situation for whatever the reason, the issue of Iran's nuclear program will not go away. On the contrary,
Yeah.
and that will continue to remain a huge unresolved issue with all the repercussions that it has. And secondly, the whole idea of US bases providing security to these countries has become a liability.
Absolutely.
So I'm afraid that the Americans have committed a gross mistake, and I don't know. Well, I know why, but they shouldn't have.
Well, I think that's the bottom line. Trump may have just made the biggest mistake of his tenure, Kamal Sibal. And unfortunately, the consequences are not just for the United States to bear, but for large parts of the world, with consequences for us here in India too. A somber note to end on. Always learn a lot from you, sir. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. And see you soon.
My
Bye-bye.
pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.